morning and welcome to NorthStar Community here at Walnut Grove Baptist Church on this Sunday morning. At NorthStar, we are recovering and we recover best together. We do that on Friday evenings with a support group at 6:30 down in the gym here at Walnut Grove. And then on Sunday mornings, Craig provides some words of encouragement and scripture, and we hope that it touches you. We also recover best by understanding some of the behaviors that drive us and those addictions and issues that we have. And then most of all, seeking a deeper connection and relationship with Jesus as we walk through life. In just a few moments, Craig will be coming with some encouraging words, but first, the praise team is going to kick us off.
He became sin who knew no sin, that one might become his righteousness. He humbled himself and carried the cross. Love so amazing, love so amazing. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. His body the bread, his blood the wine, broken and poured out, all for love. The whole earth trembled and the veil was torn. Love so amazing, love so amazing. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. All our hope is in you. All our hope is in you. All our glory to you, God, the light of the world, Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. Lord of all. Lord of all.
Amen.
Thank you, thank you. That was awesome. I wish that we could. I hear so many addicts that I've worked with throughout the years. There's always this theme with them about. I don't know how many have said to me, if I went to a church after all things I've done, I'd get hit by lightning. And I think about how sad that is that we as a Christian church have somehow communicated that you need to be perfect to be a Christian. And it hurts so much. And so when you hear songs like this, just remember, Jesus is our Messiah, our Emmanuel. Which again, if you have heard what we talked about last month, is a reminder is that Jesus is our liberator. We don't have to carry the shame and the hurt and the pain of our life. We can move on. He's forgiven us. He loves us. And the other is that God is among us. He's here today, active in our lives. That's what we believe. And I hear so many people so cynical, so hurt by religion, and it really is hurtful to see, and it's sad because God loves us. He's here with us all the time. And so let's not forget that as we go into 2021, that God is our Messiah, God is our liberator through Jesus Christ, and God loves us. When we, and of course the other side of this is, I'm not naive here. When I'm addicted, my inner critic is full speed ahead, and my inner critic tells us to judge ourselves, to loathe ourselves, to be mean to ourselves so we'll stay safe. It's crazy, but that's what it does. So in some ways, your inner critic feels like it's being heroic, like it's saving you. The problem is it's saving you from love, it's saving you from connection, it's saving you from purpose, it's saving you from having a rich, full, meaningful life. Trust me, for many of us in our lives, we know we've been hurt a lot. And there logically, you could say, yeah, this makes sense to withdraw and get through life, survive it, use our hurts, happens, and hang-ups to get through it. But the fact is, that's not what we want for life. Our life, we want connection, we want love, we want purpose. So it is January, so what the heck? Let's talk about purpose for a little bit. And it's an uncomfortable subject in many ways. I always love to give the NorthStar people a hard time about when we talk about purpose. It's like I get this chanting pushback of, oh, we don't want to talk about this. But the fact is, it's our inner critic is telling us, don't take the risk. Don't take the risk. Stay safe. Stay safe. Don't, I don't, if I'm the only one that grew up hearing this, I don't think I am, but my mother's famous line was, well, you don't want to expect too much because then you won't be so disappointed. All right? That's the symbolic statement of the inner critic. But the fact is, we can have a rich, full, meaningful life. And I really think that's where we need to be so we can be there for others. Because one of the things we definitely look at when I see someone come into NorthStar, my second thought on them is what they're going to be able to do to someone else when they get healthier, how they're going to be there for someone else. And that's how God works. So I want to read this saying to you that I used to carry with me everywhere, and then I misplaced it for 10 years, and when I was back home at Christmas, I found it again. And so I love this because it's about God's love and about the inner critic doesn't stand a chance to God's love. But I've always loved this. I found this on a church bulletin from 1981, and I carried it with me. So let me read this to you. What if God's ordering of the universe was dependent on the goodness and justice of man? It would be a world of chaos and disorder. But God's pattern is not, if you are just, I will be just. No, God's pattern is one of goodness and justice for all, good and evil, just and unjust. I'll throw in here addicted, not addicted, prior to any human response. And the ultimately astounding thing about God is this. God calls us to love our enemies and pray for our persecutors. And I will add in there, talking about us as well, because we are our worst persecutors, because this is what God does. Such love is God's perfection. I always have loved that saying. So let's read Philippians. You're going to hear Philippians a lot over the next month or so. When you really hear Philippians, it should, for us that are Christians and understand the power of the Bible, when it means, we should feel silly when we have anxiety. Now, I say that with humor because we're going to feel anxiety. But this is Paul writing to the Philippians. That's why it's called Philippians. And let me read this to you. Actually, I don't have a sense of needing anything personally. I've learned by now to be quite content whatever my circumstances. I'm just as happy with little as with much as with little. I have found the recipe for being happy, whether full or hungry, hands full or hands empty. Whatever I have, wherever I am, I can make it through anything in the one who makes me who I am. And then he's talking to the Philippians here. I don't mean that your help didn't mean a lot to me. It did. It was a beautiful thing that you came alongside me in my troubles. So if we buy that our anxiety, our depression, our morbid thinking, all these things are really driven by our addictive thinking, our addictive behaviors, which, where does that come from? It comes from our trauma and abandonment as children. And again, if you think about what we're continuing to attend to and help us become more aware of, is that we're carrying with us trauma and abandonment from our past. And again, for some of us, it's 2 years ago, 1 year ago. Some of us, it was 45, 50 years ago. But it's still real. It still affects us. So sometimes when I'm talking with someone and I'll say, well, tell me about your childhood. And they go, oh, no, we're going to talk about my childhood, right? And so what I always tell people is, it doesn't I care so much about your childhood. I just care about how your childhood's still affecting you today as an adult. That's what we have to figure out. And when our trauma and abandonment hits us, we're not capable. We can't just step back and go, well, I think, past trauma is fake. That's not what we do. We go into survival mode. We withdraw. We get destructive in many ways. We overuse. We underuse. We disconnect. We overconnect. You name it. Trauma and abandonment gets us to do over-the-top behaviors that cause lots of problems in our lives. And it usually takes someone else for us to see that. And so when we talk about purpose, if my brain's in survival mode, I'm not thinking about purpose too much. I'm going to get through today, maybe, without too much destruction. Or I'm going to assume, because of my past, that there's really, people can't be trusted, which also means institutions can't be trusted, which means I can't be trusted, which means God can't be trusted. You hear the tailspin of stuff. So think about purpose for a minute. Just think about, for a moment, stepping away from survival and thinking about what could be. Now, I always make sure I always tell people this, because a lot of times when we talk about purpose, the next thing that happens is people immediately think vocation. What do you do professionally? Are you living your purpose through your vocation? So it doesn't necessarily mean that. I want to make sure you hear that. But it does help. So what I always tell, I used to do this when I was a consultant. I'd be with groups and I'd say, look, I know God and family are way more important than your jobs. But if you're miserable in your job, your family's probably going to be a little miserable too. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to find those things in your life if you're waking up every morning dreading going to work or feeling terrible about what you do. I always ask people when I think it's time for them to look at this, I always say, what's your Sunday night like? Are you miserable? Are you dreading Monday? Are you depressed? Are you sad because you're going to be going to work the next day? If you are, you probably need to look at that a little bit. But with that said, when we talk about purpose here, we're not necessarily talking about your vocation, all right? It is important. And it's not about more. It's not about getting more. We're not talking about prosperity here. We're not talking about if you do all the things right, God's going to bless you and you're going to have more money, blah, blah, blah. We're not talking about that. But it's about us living our life feeling good about what we're doing. Waking up with something, maybe something bigger than ourselves. Maybe we're not happy in our jobs, but we have other things we do that give us purpose. So I don't want to narrow this down to that. But the point is, Our feelings are our roadmap. They're our GPS. And if we're not feeling some of this, then we need to look at what we're doing and move forward in some ways. So, and of course, I read Paul's thing in Philippians is basically about gratitude, that he has found a way to be grateful no matter what's going on. Wouldn't that be great to be there? I'm going to assume the rest of us aren't there yet. I'm not. But we certainly always have so many things to be grateful for. But it's easy to not do that. But one of the things that I want us to become grateful for is our knowledge, skills, and abilities. What are you good at? What do you like? What do you enjoy doing? What do you wish you were doing more of? Those are all things you need to think about. And I know people, we're doing virtual online with kids, and one of the kids is just, man, in the mornings it's language arts, and she's all about it, and she's in there drawing pictures, and she's listening, and she's doing great. And then at 11 o'clock, math comes, and you can just see her go like this, her emotions, right? Because math's difficult for her. And so one of the things I keep saying to her is, you know what? We're all good at certain things, other things we got to work at. But we need to be good at lots of things. And so I just got to keep telling her to remember that her KSAs, what they are and how valuable they are. The other thing about purpose is I heard a pastor one time say this: if God is not in the center of what you're doing, then you need to either get him in the center of what you're doing or quit doing what you're doing, right? So let's hope that our purpose does reflect that what we're doing is God-driven and it's ways for us to connect. And I would say this, that if we find ways for our purpose to be the right one, what we really like, what we feel good about, our morbid expectations and our anxiety will drop. But here's what I want you to hear. Creating a purpose, it sounds good, sounds great, sounds wonderful. The fact is it's an uncomfortable subject because our inner critic, our addicted self, our loathing of ourselves is going to tell you not to do this. Do not take the chance. And again, of course, we've talked about this, that past trauma equals lost purpose. I see that all the time. If you have been through, and again, let's talk about trauma real quick. There's kind of two kinds of trauma, and this we're talking about childhood here, is you have the one-time event. You saw something terrible, affected you the rest of your life. You have those. The other one is CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's where you were exposed to trauma on an ongoing basis as a child, and you're unable to escape it. You can guess which one's the more destructive. They're all powerful. And again, we keep wanting to always think about soldiers having PTSD. The fact is, more women than men have PTSD. So we can't narrow it down to that. It's ongoing trauma that we could not escape as children. That creates so much of what we live later on. So the problem with that is we learn to seek love and avoid pain when that happens. Now, what does that mean? That means that I go out and I try to find other people to make me happy, or I lay upon them the responsibility for my life, or I don't connect in ways but I still want people around me, and I do it dysfunctionally. So again, I exaggerate here, but when you're on your 33rd broken relationship, there might be a hint to you that you're struggling with past trauma. Because one of the things that happens when we've experienced childhood trauma, what we try to do is we try to get with people seeking love, and then we try to control them by making them perfect, so I can more easily control them, and I will feel safer and more loved. And I hope you hear how dysfunctional that is. One of the things I always kid about is when I work with couples, I'll say, what is it that you really liked about your spouse before you got married? And well, one of them will say, well, I'm kind of rigid, and I'm pretty structured, and I love their spontaneity. I'll go, cool, great, makes sense. And then the other person will say, well, I was, probably ADD, and I needed someone with some structure to help me kind of stay in order and do the things I need to do. Sounds great. Well, then 5 years later, what are we trying to do? We're trying to change each other to be like we want them to be. Makes no sense, right? But that's the things we do when we've had past trauma in our lives. We want to create this safety and love in us. We want to create it because it was taken from us. It was stolen from us. And the fact is, we can't do it. But instead, what we can do is we can try to create purpose. We can try to live with a purpose. Because living with no purpose is drudgery. I mean, it really is. It's an existence that you're getting by. You're making it. I don't think that's what we want. And living with no purpose, I think, also certainly gives us to more opportunities to live with anger, bitterness, and resentment. So, also, when we're here, I think rich, full, meaningful life probably at best seems remote or impossible. So we got two choices. We can live in survival, and we can become bitter, or we can find a way to turn our past hurts into growth. And again, I don't wish trauma or abandonment on anybody, but the fact is we can't turn the clock back. So all we can do is take those experiences and make us a better person. And what I mean by better person, we become more empathetic. We understand other people's pain. We don't judge people. When I don't know about you, but I see a lot of codependent behavior. I don't judge that because I've done that. I know what it's like to be codependent. So I can't judge other people. I can certainly empathize with them, though. I sometimes deal with depression, so I don't go. I've heard people say, well, people just need to suck it up and move forward. I don't know what's wrong. They need to be happy. It's not that simple. If it was, we'd all do it. I understand depression. I understand what it's like. And yes, I get anxious sometimes. I shouldn't be, right? I trust God. I know He's got everything in order. But sometimes I probably think I know more than He does about it, right? Which you know how well that works. But the point is that living with purpose can help us. So how do we get here? How do we find our purpose? So the first thing we got to do is, yes, we got to heal from the past, what I've been talking about a little bit. But I think this is important. When we've been traumatized, when we've been abandoned, we lose who we are. We lose the good things about ourselves. We come to not expect those things from us. We don't trust ourselves. And so what do? We choose security over risk-taking. We choose security over doing what we want to do. And we choose, through our hurts, habits, and hang-ups, and how we behave and all the things we do to survive, just to feel normal, just to stay safe. That's what we do. Risk-taking is a risk. How's that? Risk-taking is a risk, right? I was thinking, I always like to tell people this. Gibbons was this guy, some of you probably have seen this, the vast volume of the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, right? It's volumes. I can't remember. I think it's 20 volumes, and they're like this thick. So it's an amazing what he did. He wrote these back in the 1860s, I think. He was from England. If you took all of his stuff and boiled it down, this is what he said. He said the ultimate reason why the Roman Empire collapsed was because the citizens of the citizens of Rome chose security over liberty. That's such a symbolic statement for us in our lives. Because we suffered from trauma and abandonment, because we were hurt so much, because people we should have been able to trust hurt us, because institutions that should have been there for us was not there, we choose security over risk-taking and being free to do what we want to do. This is uncomfortable stuff, guys. So if you're not feeling good right now, don't feel bad about it. This is uncomfortable. Staying safe and being emotionally safe just doesn't work. But if we listen to God, we can do some stuff here. A deep desire to express ourselves is a good definition for purpose. So here's a quote here. Your soul has a deep desire for you to express yourself in ways that bring you joy. Through a faithful trust in God and belief in yourself, you can discover what that is and bring it about. Think about this for a minute. Think about a time when you experienced real purpose. May have been for a week, may have been for an hour, may have been for a year, may have been ongoing. So you may be fortunate enough to have that. How did you know it was your purpose? I always think about me growing up. I grew up on a farm in Nebraska. And let's just say farming was not my KSA, right? If something broke down, I would stand there and look at it and go, yep, it's broke down. Where my brother and my dad, they'd go out there and fix it, right? I used to, I don't know about, none of you ever farmed before, in Nebraska, in the summer, it gets up to 105 degrees, and the wind's blowing, and it's 120 degrees, and the dust is blowing, and you're in this nice air-conditioned cab. I kid you not, there were times I would sit there and ponder how much trouble I'd get in if I just drove through the gate instead of get out of the tractor and open it. That's how good a farmer I was, right? So in my 20s, I always had this pressure because my dad's dream, of course, was me to farm. And it was always like, I was just a kid about my parents were still waiting on me to get a job, even though I was employed the whole time. But they were still waiting for me to get a real job, right? So you talk to people, you help people. What do you do again? Are you growing something? But for me, I was growing something. So for me, there's no question. There's just nothing I love more than working with people and their distress and their pain and their misery. I've had people kid me that there must be something inherently wrong with me, that I enjoy this. But I really do. I love getting in with people who are suffering and struggling. There's just nothing gives me more joy than that. So I know it's my purpose. There's times I wonder, but on the whole, I know that's my purpose. I'm fortunate there. And so your feelings are the guide to your passion and purpose. So it's vital that we find ways to get present with our feelings, both ways. If we're doing things that make us miserable or unhappy, we need to look at that. If we're doing things that makes us happy, gives us a sense of satisfaction, we need to look at that. The problem, too, is I keep going back to our trauma and abandonment in case you don't hear me say it enough. But two words that we talk about in here quite a bit is agency and reciprocity. Which, after 2 months, I can say the word reciprocity without having to think about it, so we're getting there. So agency is that I really believe that I have the KSAs, I have whatever it's called, I have the ability to make my life what it's going to be. I have the ability to make it good. I can overcome problems, so I'm resilient. I have a purpose. I believe in myself enough to keep moving forward. Setbacks don't stop me, those kind of things. And then reciprocity is that I actually connect with people, and there's people in my life who I know love me and care about me. And when I'm away from them, I know they're thinking of me in positive terms. That's reciprocity. Well, those things I think are really important for us here with purpose because as a trauma and a past childhood trauma and abandonment, we probably don't know what agency is, and we probably really don't know what reciprocity is, or we don't trust it if we see it. So part of purpose is, I hope we'll say, is that we will find ways to find our agency and to actually look out there and see those people that actually care about us and hold us in some level of high regard. And of course, the old thing, we need to face our pain, is so true here. I wished it wasn't. We need to connect in the right way with healthy people. If we can do that, then we can set boundaries. If we set boundaries, then we don't get harmed by people so much. That's what's so important here. If I have a purpose, I know what I'm up to do. I know what I need to be focused on. I know what I need I know the people I need, because I don't know of anyone who's ever had a purpose that they did by themselves. You need other people. I know with our addictive thinking, we love to try to be by ourselves because that's safe, but it's not true. We need other people in our lives for us to be successful. But we're not going to have people in our lives we can trust if we're not able to set boundaries, which means we have to trust ourselves enough. We have to have enough agency in us to believe that if people are toxic in my life, I need to get them out of my life, or at least I need to limit their effects on me in my life, which are very courageous and difficult things to do. But it's our protections that cause us problems. When we get focused on inside of us, our pain, our inner critic, we judge ourselves, we turn to our addictions to numb our feelings, or we make others responsible for our feelings so that we can just cover up our core self-esteem. We have to do something about that to get to purpose. A rich, full, meaningful life can be achieved, but it takes risk. Heard this from the movie Ad Astra, a great quote. I'm unsure of the future, but I am not concerned. How's that sound? I love that. When I heard that, that is the anti-morbid thinking that so many of us with addiction struggle with. So let's think about finding our purpose for a moment. What do you love to do? What are things that you just love to do? What are you passionate about? What comes easy to you? What are those things? And I'll say what comes easy to you is important here for me to do a segue is because of our crazy inner critic that's always on us, yapping in our ear about what losers we are, if we do anything easy, we become distrustful of that, and we don't trust in it. And we think, well, it must be easy. Everybody can do it if I can do it. Well, that's not true, right? So make sure you understand that. If it comes easy to you, it might be telling you that you're good at it, not you need to feel guilty about it or feel bad about it. And what gives you delight? What are those things you love to do that you just, yeah, you wake up that morning going, cool, yeah. Or let's go the other way. What's the thing stopping you? What are you avoiding? What are you avoiding to keep you from getting to your purpose? How high is your frustration? I always love to ask people, 1 to 10, give me a scale. I always use 1 to 10 scale. Where are you at? Where's your anxiety? Where's your depression? Where's your frustration levels? How are you judging yourself for not living with purpose? How much of the time are you mad at yourself because you're not able to move forward? What do you wish you were doing, but you're not? These are all questions I answer for you to figure out what your purpose is. Our feelings are information. You know, you think, when I thought about this at first, I was thinking, well, purpose sounds more logical. It sounds a little less emotional, but we're telling you, you need to listen to your emotional feelings to decide what you need to be doing. But you do. Finding our purpose equals more happiness, more delight, more joy, more fun, more satisfaction. What's the opposite of not living our purpose? We're living in misery. I always like to kiddingly call it miserably content. We're unhappy, but you know what? We're not so unhappy we're going to change anything. We're going to be miserable. We're going to retire. We're going to be cynical. We're going to be making fun of every institution I ever worked for, how stupid they are and how dumb people are and all that. You know those cynical people. That's our choice. So, notice your GPS system. What are you feeling? Do you feel like you're heading in the wrong direction? Is your GPS keep telling you to take your next U-turn? Or is your GPS telling you to keep going the way you're going? What creates happiness and what creates misery in us? That's what we have to deal with. I'm hoping some of us are uncomfortable right now because purpose is uncomfortable. Because you have to let go of so many of the safety things we've done. So the secret is to hear and then to listen to what our feelings are telling us. Again, if we feel purpose, if we feel good about it, if we feel like we're doing something that's better. I sometimes like to use the term being part of something that's bigger than me. That's pretty cool. I know all of you have had that somewhere. But it's so easy to go back to safety, which isn't really safe, by the way, and to not find our purpose. So as we go through January, we're going to be talking more and more about how we find our purpose. I call this the blueprint to connecting in our lives, and this is from the movie Ad Astra. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend it to you. It's a science fiction movie, so if you don't like science fiction, then you may not like it, but if you don't mind, and I was talking to Lisa before this session, and we're talking about I like melancholy actors, characters. I like those guys. Well, Brad Pitt is the actor in this, and he is as melancholy as you're going to get, right? But this is real quick. He goes from being very disconnected. His father abandoned him and traumatized him. And then he became an astronaut. So this is in the near future is how they call it. And so he's learned to be very disconnected emotionally. Very flat. He's very efficient. He's very effective. But he's very disconnected emotionally. So I think it would be fair to say he is miserable. And they show little clips of his wife, how miserable she is with him. Anyway, long story short, end of the day, he gets it. He gets that he needs to change who he is. And what it took was he had to go 79 days into deep space by himself. And he says, during that time, he says, this is what I thought I would like, but I have found it hard to bear. That's when he starts realizing. Then he sees his dad who's still alive, and his dad rejects him again, and he realizes he needs to focus on what's important. So this is what he says. This is what he's replying to the digital online psychologist. It's not a person. It's a, we're in the future. I'm going to be replaced by AI is what I'm trying to tell you. So, but this is what he says this is how he evaluates himself. And I think this is so good. I am steady and calm. I sleep well, and I have no bad dreams. I am active and engaged. That's purpose. I am aware of my surroundings and those that are in my immediate sphere, which means the people that I have reciprocity with, I'm now connecting with. I am attentive, meaning he's paying attention to things that are important. I am unsure of the future, but I am not concerned. That is such a great quote. I am focused on the essentials and at the exclusion of all else. I will rely on those closest to me, and I will share their dreams and burdens as they share mine. I will live and love. Isn't that cool? I put on here, I added to this, I have a purpose in my life that is bigger than me. Gratitude is the most important hands-on tool for achieving a rich, full, meaningful life. God is among us. Jesus, through his grace, is my Lord and liberator. So let's close with Philippians 4 again. If I could do this paragraph, actually these two paragraphs, my life would be golden. I read it, I hear it, and I don't do it like I should. But let's try it again anyway. Celebrate God all day, every day. I mean, revel in him. Make it as clear as you can to all you meet that you're on their side, working with them and not against them. Help them see that the master is about to arrive. He could show up any minute. Don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers, letting God know your concerns. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will come and settle you down. It's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry at the center of your life. Easily said, right? But that's what we need to try to get to. That's our goal, right there. God's got it. God's with us. Us being anxious, us worrying really logically doesn't make sense as Christians. But we still do it. And we'll continue to do it. God knows that. I'm sure he goes up there and goes, okay, Craig, keep worrying, but I'm here, right? So let's close with the prayer of serenity. And I think if you really hear the words of the prayer of serenity again, talk about anti-anxiety. This prayer is what this is about, is us understanding what we have control with, which would be us setting our purpose, and the things we don't have control on, and let it go. Let God manage that part. And then it isn't about us living a perfect life or being in a perfect world. It's about, as Jesus did, accepting the hardships as a pathway to peace, and I would say as a pathway to growth, so that we can be better people, more connected. But let's leave here today knowing that we do have purpose in our life, and God is there with us and amongst us, and Jesus has forgiven us. If you're out there continuing to harm yourself with addictive behaviors and addictive thinking, it's okay. You've been forgiven. Maybe today will be the day you don't do some of those things. And then worry about tomorrow. So let's close with a prayer of serenity. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace. Taking, as Jesus did, the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. Trusting that Jesus will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. So if you're out there and you're struggling, you can email me at any time at csimpson@wgva.church. I'd love to hear from you. If you're here locally, We meet on Friday nights at 6:30 and go around the back of Walnut Grove Baptist Church in Mechanicsville. We also have Wednesday nights. If you come to that at 6:30, come and park at the front of the building, and you'll see the lights on. We meet in our multi-purpose room. If you would also like to meet online through Zoom for Wednesday nights, if you'll email me, I'll let you know the Zoom ID number. But we'd love to hear from you. You don't have to struggle and suffer alone. God loves you. Let us find our purpose in 2021 so we can have that life we dream of. And thank you for attending.